What do we do? I think we need to look for some prophets because there aren't any out there. You know, one of the worst things here is the silence of the established, the institutional church. It's just like Germany in the 30s. They cannot find their voice. I'm embarrassed. I'm a Catholic. Bishops are just completely silent. Or, you know, they make noises, but nothing happens in the parishes. And that's not only true of, you know, it's true of lots of established church things. And here's Dr. King in his famous Riverside church speech saying, there is such a thing as being too late. Life often leaves us standing bare, naked, and dejected with lost opportunity. Over the bleached bones of numerous civilizations are written the pathetic words, too late. We have assumed the name of peacemakers, but we have been, by and large, unwilling to pay any significant price. And because we want peace with half a heart, half a life, half a will, the war, of course, continues. He was talking about another war, wasn't he? Because the waging of war, by its very nature, is total. But the waging of peace, by our own cowardice, is partial. Of course, let us have peace, we cry, but at the same time, let us have normalcy. Let us lose nothing. Let our lives stand intact. Let us know neither prison, nor ill repute, nor disruption of ties with friends. There is no peace because there are no peacemakers. There are no makers of peace, because the making of peace is at least as costly as the making of war, at least as exigent, at least as disruptive, at least as liable to bring disgrace and prison and death in its wake. Civil disobedience. Martin Luther King talked about that, did it, and cited Henry Thoreau as one of the teachers in this legacy of creative protest. I looked up a little bit about Thoreau and found it fascinating to be reminded. You know, when Thoreau spent that time in jail for refusing to pay this poll tax, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was one of his tutors, had passed by. And he says, what are you doing in jail? And Thoreau said, that's not the question. The question is what you are doing out there. Now this is interesting. Emerson was out there because he believed it was short-sighted to protest an isolated evil. Society required an entire rebirth of spirituality. Well, yeah, right, okay. Emerson missed the point. Thoreau's protest was not intended to reform society. It was simply an act of conscience. If we don't distinguish right from wrong, Thoreau argued, that we'll eventually lose the capacity to make the distinction and become instead morally numb. Now, civil disobedience, that wonderful work that Thoreau wrote, ends on a happy note. And I think as people of creativity, as Americans, as people of some kind of faith, we have to remember that we have to end these things and pursue them with some sense of balance and sense of hope, and if possible, some sense of joy. After Thoreau was released, and he had that unpleasant experience with his neighbors who all sort of rejected him, didn't understand why he would, be protesting. The children of Concord, Massachusetts, brightened his mood by urging him to join a huckleberry hunt. Now, Thoreau was famous for being able to find the huckleberry bushes with the most fruit on them. And so he went off with the children, and should a child stumble, spilling berries, he would kneel by the weeping child and explain that if the child did not stumble, then berries would never scatter and new bushes would never grow. I think that may be a metaphor for us tonight. He says, Thoreau, I joined the Huckleberry Party, and they were impatient to put themselves under my conduct. And in half an hour, we were in the midst of a huckleberry field on one of our highest hills. A little perspective there. I wanted to share something from the Third Reich